customer and competitor research, I think, is super important from my experience. So I've always done some amount of customer competitor research, but I used to just quote like a per page price for a client, and then I would kind of bake like a little bit of customer research into that. And then I had this epiphany. I was like, wow, this is probably pretty valuable. There's probably companies that do just this. And so I started to scope it out as its own separate project. And this is beneficial in a couple of ways. For one, the client gets something that they can use long after you're done working with them. They'll understand their customer and their competitors much more deeply than they otherwise would have, and they'll have documents to pull from. Two, you're probably going to spot opportunities to expand the scope in a way that isn't self-serving. So, they might come to you and say, hey, we need these 3 homepages or these 3 main pages. And you might be like, okay, I'm going to start with this research project. And then you find, yeah, you do need those 3 pages, but you would also benefit from these other 5 pages. And here's why, pointing to the research. And then all of a sudden you've, more than doubled the scope of the project, and you're delivering more value, which is, super important and obviously financially beneficial as well. I guess something that comes top of mind for me for a resource for anyone who's thinking like this sounds like a ton of work, I would point to Jen Havice's book, Finding the Right Message. And in there, she's talking about how to survey customers, how to interview customers, how to organize, what is, a ton of voice of customer data, which is really messy and tedious to go through.
Oh, yeah.
And so being able to organize that and then break it down into different formats that like different people in the org will actually use. For example, a CEO is not going to look at your raw voice of customer data with your 300 quotes and all your notes. They're going to want to see things distilled down in a way that they can read in a few minutes. Yeah, you have anything to add to customer competitor research?
Yeah, I guess I would just say that I think of the different research methods there are for the copywriter, I don't think that there's any replacement for the customer interview. That is, I think, just one of the absolute best ways to really figure out who you're talking to, or who your copy is trying to convince. And developing the interviewing skill actually itself takes some time, because you have to learn how to sort of, you need to go in with your questions and your general idea of what you want to find out, but you also have to be kind of open to letting the conversation sort of take its own natural path. And all the while you have to be kind of stopping, or you let them talk, but whenever they are being a little bit too general, a little bit too vague, you have to kind of stop them and get them to be more specific. And I think that that's kind of the knack to customer interviews, is when, you say, what were you struggling with when you started looking for a company like this, this B2B SaaS company? And if they give you a kind of summary answer of, hey, we were struggling with, slow sales or whatever it is, you have to stop and go, okay, paint me a picture. What does that look like? What, did you have were there, you're trying to find out, was there a moment when they were having a meeting and someone said, if we don't speed up our sales cycles, we're going to be dead in the water in 9 months, or whatever it is. You're trying to get to that level of specificity. And I think that's ultimately the skill of customer interviews that makes it worth it.
And that specificity is the source of great copy. The copy that's longer than clients typically want, but is actually effective.
Yeah. Otherwise,
because episode.
Otherwise, every homepage headline for B2B SaaS would be, save money, make money, or save time.
Save time. Yeah, exactly.
There aren't that many different ways to phrase these things. And so that's where you're trying to get and crawl into that level of detail and specificity.
For sure. Yeah. Without getting too deep, I guess, just to give people like an idea of how I would approach customer and competitor research, like super high level. I'm sure we're going to go deep on this in the future. For me, it's like 4 phases. So phase 1, I'm asking a client to send me anything they can send me that will help me understand their product, their category, and their ideal customers. Then I'm talking to people who are actually customer facing. So sales, success, support, product, on actually the kind of understanding, again, the product, the category, and their ideal customer from their perspective. I'm using this to inform like a jobs to be done style survey, which you should get familiar with the jobs to be done framework.
Absolutely.
There's lots of good books on it. I'm using those survey responses to inform interviews, because now I can actually ask follow-up questions and go deeper and kind of skip through some of the super high-level questions, because you have limited time when you're doing an interview. And then obviously, I guess step 5 would be actually analyzing and organizing all of that information. So that's kind of like how I approach it. I don't know if you have anything. You probably do something pretty similar.
Yeah, similar.
In an ideal world, anyways.
Yeah, in an ideal world. And
sometimes
that's the other
the
thing.
survey doesn't always make sense. And
Yeah, and the reality is you never have answers to all of the questions that you wish you could. I mean, I've never been sitting down knowing there's always something where I go, I wish I knew a little bit more about X or Y. That's the reality of it. I don't think anyone is ever going off of 100% data or anything like that.
No, definitely not.